Today's reading for Friday of the Easter week comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 21, verses 1 to 14. Jesus revealed himself again to his disciples at the Sea of Tiberias. He revealed himself in this way. Together were Simon Peter, Thomas, called Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, Zebedee's sons, and two others of his disciples. Simon Peter said to them, "I'm going fishing." They said to him, "We also will come with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. When it was already dawn, Jesus was standing on the shore, but the disciples did not recognize that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, "Children, have you caught anything to eat?" They answered him, "No." So he said to them, "Cast the net over the right side of the boat, and you will find something." So they cast it, and were not able to pull it in because of the number of fish. So the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he tucked in his garment, for he was lightly clad, and jumped into the sea. The other disciples came in the boat, for they were not far from the shore, only about 100 yards, dragging the net with the fish. When they climbed on the shore, they saw a charcoal fire with fish on it and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you just caught." So Simon Peter went over and dragged the net ashore, full of 153 large fish. Even though there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come, have breakfast." And none of the disciples dared to ask him, "Who are you?" because they realized it was the Lord. Jesus came over and took the bread and gave it to them, and in like manner the fish. This was now the third time Jesus was revealed to his disciples after being raised from the dead. The Gospel of the Lord. Today we begin the last chapter in John's Gospel, and it's an extremely touching, moving recollection of an encounter that Jesus has with his disciples just before he is taken from them. Jesus meets them on the shore as they go out fishing. They have caught nothing. And Jesus, as in a similar story that we find in Luke's Gospel, tells them to throw their nets on the other side of the boat, and they will catch something. And indeed, when they cast the net, they find that there are so many fish they can hardly bring it into the boat. John is playing with many symbols in this section of John's Gospel. It recalls the breaking of the loaves and fishes for the feeding of the 5,000 that occurred earlier in John's Gospel, and indeed it goes back to the miracle in the city of Cana, where Jesus multiplied the containers of wine so that there was an abundance for the marriage feast. This is an image of Jesus' boundless generosity, of his willingness to give to his disciples and to us abundantly from his riches, if only we could recognize him. And that is really at the heart of today's gospel. Why did they not recognize him? And what enabled John, the beloved disciple, to be able to recognize Jesus? The name of the beloved disciple already reveals what I think was the key to unlocking our mystery today, and that is the relationship of intimacy that allowed the beloved disciple to recognize his Lord. So often in our lives, Jesus comes to us in the same way, in the form of strangers, in the form of people that we don't really know, and yet the Lord uses them as his instruments. In the same way that we too are called to be instruments of God's grace, God's love to other people, even though they may not recognize the hand of God in what we are doing. I think our gospel today invites us to pray for that grace to be able to recognize Jesus in our ordinary lives, to recognize Jesus in the people around us, even those people that we think we know, and yet become the tools through which God works his grace and his love in us.